Hi, everyone. Welcome to Kindred Skulls. We are back with an emergency episode. Obviously, Justin Jefferson signed his contract earlier today, so we wanted to give you guys the full breakdown, kind of give a little bit of in-depth analysis in terms of what's going on with the contract. It's up on Over the Cap. Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk deserves one tiny little bit of credit in this whole thing, in that he, did have the contract details first, so I guess we should give him that credit. And we'll get to why he doesn't get any other credit later in the show. Nick, how you doing today?
I'm good. Florio, I think, clearly is just Jefferson's agent's mouthpiece in this whole thing. Just ginning Jefferson up. Oh, they're going to trade him if you don't pay him enough. Oh, you guys better move. Blah blah blah. That agent clearly wanted another beach home, and that his second beach home closing was dependent on getting this Jefferson deal through the finish line. So, I think the most surprising thing about this process is that it wasn't at all surprising. Maybe the timing's a little bit surprising. I wouldn't have been surprised if this dragged on a little bit longer. That said, Vikings, this was probably their number one thing on their offseason list, and now you'll see them start to turn their attention to a few other things like Darisaw extension, some other contract restructures, a few more things. They've got a lot of cap space now if they want to go put some more chips into this next upcoming season. At the same time, I'm not sure that's how they're building their roster right now. But yeah, I said, Leo, the thing that doesn't, the surprising thing to me is it's not surprising. It's 4 years. That's about right. We saw some wide receivers come in at 3, take a smaller number to be able to double dip once the cap is shot up a little bit more. I think gone are the days of getting superstars for 5-year contracts. Would have been nice to have a 5th year at the end, but at the same time, I don't think there's a ton of value, especially when that 5th year is usually like funny money. $50 million or something you slap on there, which you're going to renegotiate by that point anyway, so it doesn't really actually add that much value. And the number was $35 million, which is just barely enough to become the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL, which I think we all kind of knew that's where he was going to land. He was going to land at, a little bit more than Bosa, but not egregiously more. Like, if somebody had told you, 4 years, $140 million, I think anybody could have guessed that number. So it's kind of funny. I get the notable that it's legit $140 million. There isn't funny money in here. It's not Tyreek's deal. But otherwise, I think we all knew this was kind of coming, and it's just nice to see it confirmed.
Yeah, the most notable thing about this deal is that there really is no funny money. The Vikings don't really have a true out. They could get out prior to 2027 if they want to. Obviously, I don't think there's any reason we can conceive of right now that you would want to move on from Justin Jefferson in 4 years, right? But, it's the NFL. Things do happen eventually. So they don't really have an out in the contract, but it's very similar, in my opinion, to the Bosa deal. I did a contract projection a couple weeks ago. I came in very close to these numbers overall, basing it off of the Bosa deal. I had $87 million fully guaranteed. I had $109 million functionally guaranteed. It's $110 million functionally guaranteed, 88 point something to beat Bosa fully guaranteed, right? So it's very close to what you would frankly expect. And I kind of had a little bit of pre-cope, I'll say, in that deal. I put it at $36 million instead of $35 million because I was like, what if we were actually harmed by waiting a year? And that's the thing that gets me, right? Is this whole offseason, there's been such conversation about how Justin Jefferson is going to absolutely destroy the market. And I guess that's true for wide receivers because, if you look at the wide receiver deals, right, Amon-Ra St. Brown is, kind of real money. There's some funny money in there, but it's mostly real money. A.J. Brown is real money, but it's 3 years out because he had 3 years left on his deal. So it's kind of funny money in that respect because he's not going to see the $32 million until 2027 starting, right, instead of 2025 for Justin Jefferson. And then Tyreek's last year of his deal, he has a $45 million salary. It's complete funny money for that $30 million. The real functional AAV is just over 25, right? So, it totally resets the wide receiver market, but it doesn't reset the player market because it's almost copy-paste of the Bosa deal, frankly, with $1 more million added on. You've got the signing bonus. You've got option bonuses like you do in the Bosa deal. You've got a similar salary escalation. Now, Bosa is signed for 1 more year in San Francisco, so that is a little bit to the 49ers' benefit compared to where the Vikings are. But to your point, the Vikings' goal would not be for Justin Jefferson to hit free agency entering his age 30 season, right, in 2020, 2029, right? Their goal would be to re-sign him before then, at this point, if things go well. And if things don't go well, you don't really care that you don't have the fifth year on the deal, right? Because for whatever reason it failed, you don't really care. So overall, I think it's a very strong contract for Jefferson. I think it makes sense that he reset the market. And, like, he was always going to reset the market because Nick Bosa had to sign 1 year before him, right? Like, Nick Bosa's timeline, he was drafted in 2019. His timeline started 1 year earlier. So, of course, it makes sense for Justin Jefferson's agent to wait out the Bosa deal, which happened, like, on the eve of the NFL season last year. It was signed September 6th, right? And do it here. And in terms of a timing perspective, I think it's perfect because Jefferson wasn't at OTAs. That made headlines, whatever. They're not mandatory. Mandatory minicamp is this week, so you really need to get this deal done for Jefferson to avoid racking up the fines for not showing up to mandatory minicamp and that sort of thing. So it's actually really a benefit to both sides, I think, getting it done in this time frame, and it does make some logical sense to have it done immediately before mandatory minicamp to me.
Yeah, totally. It's actually kind of nice to have this like settled. We don't have to do the drama anymore. Mm-hmm. We can kind of, like I said, they've got a lot of other things on their off-season to-do list. So knocking this one out allows Jefferson to participate in OTAs, maybe get some reps under with J.J. McCarthy or Sam Darnold, whoever the quarterback's going to be, get that process going. But like I said, like we kind of knew what the numbers would be. One thing that's interesting is they did do the thing where they made him so he was going to come in at his fifth year. He had his fifth year option left. And after that, the Vikings would have had, the franchise tag option for 1-2 years. Maybe theoretically you could do 3, but third would be exorbitant, wouldn't be worth it. But now they've got him for 5 years of team control. And next year they actually created $11.1 million in cap space for the 2024 season by basically converting his fifth year option salary of almost $20 million to signing bonus. So that creates a little bit of space. It does balloon the later cap hits a little bit more, but the cap is going to continue to rise. We say this is an unprecedented record-breaking deal. At the same time, if you compare it to his percentage of the cap, it's similar to what Julio Jones got. It's similar to what Megatron got. So that the fact that I think Jefferson should be very happy with this deal. Obviously, anybody should be happy to be the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. I think he did very strongly. I think he did particularly very strongly on the guarantees. It's not a fully guaranteed deal, but he almost got $100 million in guaranteed money over 4 years. That's insane for a non-quarterback. So good for him. I'm sure if you're the Vikings, you're completely fine with the risk that you're going to have to pay a Hall of Fame wide receiver in his prime. And that's really the big thing for me to emphasize. Yeah, you're paying a market contract, and I've seen some people upset that, oh, man, we're paying quarterback money to a non-quarterback, which is guys, you're getting it's literally a future Hall of Famer. Yeah. Many would be the consensus first non-quarterback taken off the board in a redraft, and he is 25 years old. And you got him for 4 years. It's literally, we're not talking about paying Tyreek Hill when he's 35. We're talking about paying Justin Jefferson 25, Absolutely. 26, 20. Literally the best years he will ever give anybody. And you're talking about the absolute prime time. So to pay him market-breaking contracts, yeah, it's a lot of money, but also at the same time, this is what the money is for. I mean, this is why you draft J.J. McCarthy, is so that you create the cap space so you can give it to a Justin Jefferson. So an absolute, the very definition of win-win. Any team, 30-on-1 other teams would have been happy to give Jefferson this money. The Vikings clearly are very happy. Justin Jefferson should be very happy. Vikings fans should be very happy because they get to watch this guy for the next 5 years be a Viking. And we're going to be able to see him get to work on training camp OTA. So it's all good news all the way down.
Yeah, just a couple things to pull out there. I think, first of all, $35 million a year is not quarterback money anymore. It's bad quarterback money. $45 million a year is the new quarterback money, right? You can follow Kirk Cousins to figure out 55. Where quarterback money is, right? It's $10 million more a year. The cap just keeps going up and it goes up. And even if you're not obviously we're never going to say anybody but Justin Jefferson is the number one overall pick, right? But I'm sure 49ers fans are taking Nick Bosa first. I'm sure Bengals fans are taking Jamar Chase first, right? Dolphins fans would rank Tyreek Hill over Justin Jefferson if you were ranking the best receivers in the NFL right now, right? There's some room for hair splitting, or if he's the best non-quarterback. But guess what? He's the most recently paid best non-quarterback, right? Like, and that's always going to be the top of the market. Jamar Chase, when he signs his extension, is going to beat the Justin Jefferson extension next year. Like, it's going to happen. It's what happens. This happens with quarterbacks all the time, right? We can split hairs over, like, last year, 3 or 4 different guys set the market, right? It was like Hurts, Herbert, Lamar, or Hurts, Herbert, Burrow, and then Lamar, I think, in that order. I don't remember the exact order, but, like, these guys are going to get crazy money pretty much no matter what, and they deserve it. Justin Jefferson absolutely deserves it. He should be taking a victory lap on this. The second thing is percentage of the cap at time of signing that you mentioned, right? I have it at 13.7. Tyreek's deal with the funny money is more at 14.4. If you take out the funny money, it's less. Julio is a good point. And if you look at it over the history, over the cap, I think, doesn't have projections for the cap out as far as 28 and 29, or at least it's not listed on that one page. I could be off on that now, though. I had pulled it like a couple weeks ago. But Jefferson's hitting about 13.8% of the cap in both 2026 and 2027, which is roughly what his contract is as a percentage of the cap. So that's the most he's taking up against the cap over the course of this contract, right? It's not it's not a low number, obviously, but it's not a crippling number, and there are absolutely ways to mitigate that with void years moving into the future, right? So I'm not really worried about it. And then finally, just the guarantee structure, you pointed out, like, there is, even if you take out the $19.743 million he was owed this year, right? If you take that out of the contract entirely, he's functionally guaranteed $106 million on this contract because he's got rolling guarantees in years 3 and 4 of the deal, right? And he's owed $15 million in guarantees in that 2027 season, which makes it hard for them to cut him because it'd be like a $48 million dead cap. They'd increase their cap hit with him by like $4 million. You could post June 1st it or whatever, but at the end of the day, you're probably not going to want to cut Justin Jefferson for any amount of money if you're going over to the cap at that point, right? So he's probably going to get the full $29 million on top of, the $15 million, right? So that extra $14 million I would count as functionally guaranteed, which means he's functionally guaranteed $106 million in new money, which is an insane value.
Yeah. Yeah. Great for him. He doesn't really have to worry about injuries. And if you're the Vikings, look, like he got injured last year and was still arguably the MVP. So he's a really good player. I'm sure the Vikings are very, and like what's the risk? Like, again, it's a 25-year-old guy who's already cemented himself as like a first ballot Hall of Famer. Like, there are very, very few guys. Micah Parsons may be the only other guy in the NFL you could say that about right now. Maybe Jamar Chase, but I would say Jefferson. There's a bit of a tier difference between him and Chase. So there just aren't many. Maybe Penei Sewell, but like it's just there aren't many guys in that tier. And Sewell's an interesting example because like we talk about how much the cap explodes over time. Like Brian O'Neill signed his extension 3 years ago. And at the time, he was the highest paid right tackle in the NFL. Right now, Sewell's making almost twice as much as him per year. And Sewell's a bit of a unique case, but like it shows you how much the cap explodes, how quickly. So to the people who are like, oh man, I can't believe how much money we're giving to a position that is not quarterback. Like go back and watch some Justin Jefferson highlights to appreciate like how great it is just to be like as a fan, like you get to watch don't take that for granted. Like there are a lot of we're all Minnesota sports fans. We've watched a lot of like bad teams before. But having a guy like Justin Jefferson on your team, like no matter how bad the roster is, it's always going to be very fun. In the same way that like there were some bad Vikings teams in the early 2000s, but guess what? Randy Moss was on them, and Randy Moss was really fun. And Jefferson, I'm not saying he's a better wide receiver than Moss, but like he's a very consistent wide receiver. Like I can't see Jefferson not panning out. He's just. And we don't have to get into a full Jefferson scouting report, but he's just like good at everything, man. He's got fantastic. He's got a top 5 release, top 5 the stem of his routes, top 5 break of his routes, top 5 at the catch point. I mean, not both in terms of the insane. I mean, we can all remember the miracle catches he's made, but also in terms of like drops. He doesn't drop the ball very much. He's very good at like he's not maybe not a top five pure speed athlete, but he's not that far off either. And in terms of functional athleticism, he can win and stack guys immediately off the release or on downfield on vertical route. It's actually kind of insane. You don't think of him as like a burner, but like he's so good on fade routes on the sideline because he's so good at establishing leverage. Like he's just and after the catch, he's not he's not like a tank breaking tackles, but he's so good at seeing like where the holes in the zone coverage behind me or as a runner. So he's just like the absolute complete package. There's no scenario, and he gets better every year somehow too. Like there's just no way in which you're not looking at this guy as a bargain in a few years, in my opinion. So I'm just very happy and blessed to be able to have this guy on the team that I cheer for.
No, absolutely. And like you look at Randy Moss, right, with that comparison, the one thing that Randy Moss, that held Randy Moss back was him not wanting to play. And there are a variety of factors that were at play with Moss not giving effort, but at the end of the day, he didn't give effort in certain circumstances, and that's why he flamed out of the Vikings the first time, then with the Raiders right before having the renaissance with the Patriots, because he was always physically talented. It was a question of whether or not Randy wanted to play, right? Justin Jefferson, you don't have those questions at all, right? No matter how much freaking aggregator accounts or whatever wanted to speculate that he was going to sit out the season, or media personalities wanted to speculate he was going to sit out the season. The play sequence that sticks in my head from last year is in the Lions game, where the season's basically dead at this point, and everybody remembers that 3rd and 20 ridiculous catch. It's like reminiscent of the Bills catch where it was like over multiple defenders, converted the first down, right? But the play before that, I think Nick Mullins threw the ball backwards or something, and Jefferson hustled like 20 yards down the field and recovered the fumble, right? Like, this dude cares about football, and that's why I can't see it possibly failing. Like, I don't see how he loses that spark, right? And it's like, it's been so frustrating to see the coverage of this, because it's like, oh, does Justin Jefferson want to play for the Minnesota Vikings even? Like, or do the Vikings want Justin Jefferson? Like, for the entire offseason with all these aggregator accounts and Mike Florio kind of ringing the drum, right? And I'm just so tired of it. And the thing is, we're going to go into another one of these this year with Christian Darrisaw, right? Christian Darrisaw is 30 of his deal. He's eligible for an extension, but these things don't often get done after the third-year deal. Kwesi said it last year with Justin Jefferson, right? So are we going to go into this offseason and get disappointed that Christian Darrisaw didn't sign before the season started, and then disappointed that he didn't sign before the draft happened, and then he signs during, right before mandatory minicamp again next year? Like, let's try to be better and guard against that, I guess, is kind of what my message is here.
Matt's going all in on Florio right now.
I'm tired of it, man. Like, I mean, obviously I posted the tweet, but it's like 15 articles about, did the Vikings try to trade for Malik Neighbors? The Vikings better pay Justin Jefferson or trade him to somebody who wants to pay him. Like, they can't just hold on to him and play a silly game. Like, man, the cost for Justin Jefferson just went up. No, it didn't. No, they aren't going to trade him. No, they didn't try to trade for Malik Neighbors. Like, it's just so annoying, man. I'm so tired of it. Like, I only want to read legit sourced reporting at this point. Like, I don't care about a single aggregator count. Don't show them to me. Show me the actual legit reporting where it's like, I have a real source here. And Florio does have real sources. I'm not saying Florio is like a guy who just makes stuff up for fun. And I'm not saying that this isn't stuff that he's hearing. But like, Bob McGinn hears a million different ridiculous things from scouts and just blurts them out in his, yearly draft articles, right? Like, we got to have a little bit more media literacy in terms of how we're looking at these things and consuming them, and not freak out every single time somebody makes a completely on-face ridiculous rumor about a player. Like, it's just gotten me really frustrated this offseason.
Bravo. You're off your soapbox, man.
Yeah.
Well done. Well, one last thing I'll say about Jefferson is you're not just the on-field product. Like, we all know the route running, the ability after the catch, the ability at the catch point. He's elite at everything across the board, and we've all seen the stats, the accolades, the Offensive Player of the Year awards, the All-Pros. But you're also investing in the intangibles, and man, like Jefferson nails those. You're talking about a guy who was like not quite a walk-on at LSU, but like an unheralded recruit who kind of grinded his way every step of the way there. He does the dirty work in the blocking game. Everything you hear about his what he does off the field. Like this is a guy who lives, breathes football, and wants to be great, and is going to continue to be great, and like just fuels his whole person into that greatness. And so that's the kind of guy that like I'm happy investing in. I'm happy, comfortable taking the risk on. I don't see a lot of risk in paying. I guess he's technically 24 right now, but he turns 25 in a few weeks. Like having that, like the downside risk is what you got a future Hall of Famer in his prime on your roster. So, and the upside is this is a guy who is capable of being a Super Bowl difference maker. I mean, you're talking like an Aaron Donald type. I don't think the Rams ever regretted paying Aaron Donald so much money. And in fact, it did ultimately result in them getting a ring because he was the best player on the field in that Super Bowl. So all around, like I said, Jefferson checks every box, both in terms of his pro scouting report on the field, but also the intangibles and the kind of guy you're getting in him. So I think everybody from the coaching staff to the fans to Justin Jefferson himself and his agent, everybody should be happy about this.
No, absolutely. Like, he's probably a top 10 recognizable player in the NFL when you include quarterbacks, right? Like, when you include quarterbacks, which are obviously the most recognizable people. And it's because of, and it's because of off the field things, right? It's because of his personality. It's because of the gritty and things like that. But I bet you, like, every high school wide receiver in America wants to be Justin Jefferson, right? Like, I don't really, like, it's just he's so, like, gregarious of a personality, right? That it seems infectious. And I don't know how you could have moved away from that if you were the Vikings, right? Like, moving on from him would have never made any sense in any universe to me. So,
yeah, you do not trade a 24-year-old future Hall of Famer.
No, like you just don't do it with his level of stardom and consistency so far, right? It's not like he has had one blow-up season, right? He had 3 phenomenal seasons and got a 1,000-yard season in a season where he played like 9 games, right? Like where he's injured, or I think he did play 10 games, but he missed like the entirety of that Raiders game, right? So just an absolutely absurd performance from Justin Jefferson throughout his entire career so far, and I really don't think it's going to fall off. So really exciting. Glad to wrap this up. Hopefully you got the contract details that you wanted to hear out of this, some of the detail in the contract that you wanted to hear about out of this. Anything else to add, Nick?
Oh, I mean, that's it. I'm just very happy. So hopefully you guys are too.
Absolutely.
The fact that we get to watch this guy, like he's the consensus best wide receiver in the NFL. First of all, stop and think about like how often in recent NFL history has there been a one consensus guy? Maybe Julio in his prime, maybe Antonio Brown in his prime, and maybe Megatron in his prime. And, we're talking about like a 2-3 year period because these guys kind of went up and down over that period. Jefferson is on that level, maybe even a little bit above it. I mean, Megatron's prime was pretty insane if you guys remember it or were old enough to watch it. And Moss before him, like, of course, and Fitz. So there's like a lot of great guys, but like Jefferson stands toe to toe, maybe even a little bit above each of these guys. And again, he's 24 years old, turning 25, and the Vikings have him under contract now until the next decade, like 2029. Yeah. So that is really awesome. The fact that we're going to continue to get to watch this guy, and the fact that having the best non-quarterback in the NFL makes your team a lot better. Because wide receiver is arguably, I mean, the NFL contracts attest to this, it's the most valuable position outside the quarterback, too. That's why they're getting paid all this money, is because we were realizing that it's not just the quarterback, it's also the guys around the quarterback that make the passing offense, which drives victories go. So all of this, like I said, I've been going to repeat myself, but like everybody should be happy because everything about this is just a win for everybody. So
yeah, absolutely. So to wrap it up, I am Matt Freese. You can find me at Fries Football. He is Nick Olson. You can find him at Nick Olson NFL. Our co-host Greg is at the Gregg Blake on Instagram. We are Kindred Skulls at Kindred Skulls on Twitter. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, also on YouTube. So with that, Skull Vikings.
Goal. Goal, baby.
Another first-round corner wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, another first-round corner wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, another first-round corner wouldn't do us any harm. And we'll all cheer on behind, and we'll score.